Welcome to Chips and Salsa. I'm Jerry.
I'm CRob.
Today we continue our series on open source security, and as always, we are talking to Intel experts about their work and contributions to the community and how they help move uh, the overall ecosystem security to higher levels.
That's right. And today our guest is Tamas Lengyel. He's from the open source security team, who, on top of all the amazing work he does as an Intel employee, does a ton of work volunteering upstream. First off, he's the chief research officer at the HoneyNet project, which is an international nonprofit that coordinates the development of open source tools to fight against malware.
Yeah, before we get started, just a reminder that we started this series on open source security with the manager of the team, Antonio Gomez, who gave us an overview of the work his team does. And that was Chips and Salsa episode 15, which you can get to from the link on the screen. So now let's bring in Tom to talk about the work he does. Well, Tom, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here today. How are you doing?
Thanks for the invitation. Things are good.
Awesome. So give us a little bit about your background and how you ended up working here at Intel.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. I joined Intel 3 years ago. Nothing crazy about the story there, really. I applied for a posting that was on jobs.intel.com. Funnily enough, my wife found it just browsing the web looking for research positions, and she sent it over to me saying that, hey, this kind of sounds like the stuff you do. I applied out of the blue on a Friday afternoon, and I got a call back Monday from the hiring manager, and I joined a month later.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So yeah, let's talk about the work that you're doing here at Intel. CRob, you want to start?
Yeah. So can you maybe describe to us? I know a big part of your job is working for Intel, but I'm more interested in the other side. What's it like to be an upstream maintainer? What types of things do you do as an upstream maintainer?
Absolutely. So I have a handful of projects that I maintain in the open source security realm, mostly in the hypervisor realm. So I'm a maintainer of the Zen hypervisor and some of the tools that are building on top of that, such as libvmi, that allows us to peer inside virtual machines for security purposes. So you can implement things like intrusion detection systems, malware analysis, and fuzzing. I build mostly tools in the security realm, and I help the community make use of those tools. Mostly the work is maintaining CI systems at this point. So the overhead is fairly small in terms of maintenance. I rely on my tools to get the job done for me. It's usually when the tools tell me that a contribution is of sufficient quality where I actually have to take a look at the code to do manual source code review. And it's usually fairly fast and painless for me as well as for the developers. In my opinion, that's usually the best way to maintain large projects, is to automate as much as you can so that people actually want to contribute to those projects because they see value in the testing that the infrastructure gets for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so you do some work with the Zen hypervisor community. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started working on Zen while I was doing my PhD at UConn. I was researching into honeypots and malware analysis technologies. And I started using Zen because it already had this introspection API that was added as an experimental feature. And I figured that would be a good way to actually create more robust honeypots, more robust malware analysis tools, because you can use the hypervisor layer to kind of hide from malicious code. It wouldn't be able to detect that someone is monitoring. So you would be able to collect more quality data. And I started working on the project. I started building tools. I started finding bugs, and I started contributing those bugs back. And one thing led to another. I was asked to actually step in as a maintainer. So I actually am now the maintainer of that introspection API that I started building on. And I've been doing that ever since.
That's awesome.
It's a fun project. It's very open to crazy ideas. So you are welcome to contribute experimental features. It's a little bit easier to get things into Zen in my experience than like something like Linux, because you have that experimental feature set that you can add to it, which is awesome.
So you also work on KFX, and
Correct.
that can you maybe talk a little about that and talk about kernel fuzzing or hypervisor fuzzing a little
Yes.
more?
Yeah. So KFX is actually one of the project that I started once I joined Intel. It's also a security project building on the Zen hypervisor. The idea there was to create a tool that can reach areas of a operating system that normal fuzzing tools have a harder time reaching. Most of the fuzzing tools that our pen test team that I work with we're focused on the system call interface, but there are a bunch of drivers that, for example, Intel is building, which has interfaces towards devices or kernel internal subsystems that the existing fuzzing tools can't really reach efficiently. So the idea was to create a system on top of Zen that I can actually hook those internal layers of a kernel. We focus mostly on the Linux kernel, so that we can actually fuzz those interfaces that are exposed to, say, a malicious device. We did this, for example, for the USB 3 subsystem. This was actually a requirement from one of the clients that we were building the system for at Intel. They asked us to actually validate the Linux kernel from that perspective. And it was a good call because there are actually a bunch of bugs in those low-laying interfaces that were not discovered before because there were no tools that were able to automatically find those bugs. With KFX, we were able to get those bugs discovered in a matter of weeks, get those fixed, get the fixes upstream, and that makes everyone's devices a lot more secure.
Good. That sounds super cool. You're also involved in something called the libVMI. Am I saying that right?
Yes, that's correct.
What can you share about that work?
So libVMI is sort of the glue that puts it all together. It's a abstraction library to allow this type of introspection into virtual machines. It's hypervisor agnostic. So I mostly work with Zen, but the libVMI abstraction library works with any hypervisor that you plug into it. So there is a driver for KVM, there is a driver for QEMU, there is one for Bearflank, different types of hypervisors. So you can build your application using the libVMI library and actually swap out the hypervisor underneath, and your tool keeps working. So actually KFX, as well as all of my other security tools that I built on top of Zen, are actually built on top of libVMI. And that makes the code a lot more robust because I'm not actually tied to Zen. I can actually switch to whatever hypervisor I want to if I need to. And that happens occasionally where we need to get one of the tools moved over from, say, Zen to KVM because KVM has a feature that we need to make use of that Zen doesn't have. I don't have to rewrite my entire code stack. I can actually just swap out the driver and everything works. It's pretty great.
That's very handy.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your work on the HoneyNet project? That's something you do in your free time, right?
Yes.
It doesn't sound like you have a lot of that.
Yeah, so as I said, most of the open source maintenance is very low overhead. It's mostly automated at this point. The HoneyNet project is also something that I've been involved since my days working at the university, working on my PhD. The HoneyNet project is a nonprofit research organization founded in 1999, so it's been around for a long time. And it started out as an organization to run network sensors, honeypots, and collect information and generate reports. But over the years, it has evolved into this whole ecosystem of security tools in the realm of threat intelligence, malware analysis, and pen testing, and hypervisors. So we do a lot of work in the open source realm. It's mostly actually in the open source realm the HoneyNet project is doing. We participate in the Google Summer of Code project so that we actually get sponsored by Google to host students, or in this year, any interested party who wants to work on open source security tools, to spend 3 to 6 months actually working in the open source security ecosystem. This year, we are in the last phase of actually selecting which projects will be part of this year's Google Summer of Code project. It looks like we will have about 9 to 10 projects ranging from Android malware analysis to network pen testing tools to honeypots and binary emulation frameworks and a whole set of tools that will benefit the entire open source security ecosystem. And it's a really fantastic community. It's worldwide. We have people from Asia, from Europe, from the US, all over the place. It's really a fun group to be part of. We have usually a yearly workshop that we host. Unfortunately, that's being postponed for a couple of years now due to COVID. But hopefully this year we will be able to regroup, and it's usually a really fun, yeah, it's usually a really fun event that we gather and share stories and presentations. And
that sounds great.
It's really a fun group. I really enjoy working with them, and again, just being, helping the community out and seeing all the projects that are being developed is great. I'm a huge fan of open source, if that hasn't been true yet. So I like giving back, and it's really low overhead as well in terms of time, because the community is very self-driven and really quality people participate in it. So
it's awesome that all the stuff you do to help educate too as well.
I'm doing what I can. Obviously, the time limit is there. There's only 24 hours in the day, so I have to prioritize what we focus on. So this year, for example, I'm not actually mentoring any students working on open source projects. I'm actually just doing the administrative task of making sure everyone is applying on time, that everything gets reviewed on time if something is missing. So you do what you can, and you let the community chime in where they can. So it's working out really well for everyone involved. So
now, do you get to apply any of this work, any of these techniques or tools in your day job here at Intel?
Yes. Obviously, some of the tools that we are making at HoneyNet are directly applicable to the pen testing, for example. So some of the tools that we are building at HoneyNet, for example, Mitten Proxy, would be something that the pen testing can use when they are pen testing a network system. It acts as a man-in-the-middle system that you can actually inspect network traffic. If you ever heard of Burp, it's very similar to that. It's a different open source project. That is absolutely something that's applicable to Intel. KFX, again, is also open source. We absolutely use it at Intel for security validation. The other tools that HoneyNet is developing are more in the realm of running honeypots, and those I haven't seen Intel make use of. I think honeypots are actually very underutilized in the enterprise landscape. I think honeypots are awesome and should be more of a cornerstone of network security. So maybe that is something that we should be using more.
I agree.
Yeah. So do you have any big project milestones coming up, or major features that you're currently working on that you want to mention at all?
Yes, absolutely. There is always some project in the background. Usually between pen test projects, I have a couple weeks to actually get started on some crazy new idea. So the next one that is coming up that we already started putting the roots down for is a CPU fuzzer project, actually, that would allow us to run arbitrary instructions in micro VMs, effectively running single instructions and see how the system behaves, finding software bugs as well as hardware bugs. So far, it's still in the prototype phase. Hopefully, it will get open sourced before the end of this year. It's already been fantastic at finding bugs in Xen, for example. So it is promising, and obviously, we will see how the hardware fuzzing side goes. I think we will have a lot of fun with it.
It sounds great.
Yeah,
Do you get the? Go ahead, Jerry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's cool because again, Antonio covered that you guys open source a lot of your fuzzing tools and your scripts and stuff like that to help other people contribute to that work. So that's awesome.
Yeah, we have this strong belief that at Intel we should be focused on creating the tools that allow our customers to validate our products just as much as we can validate our products internally. Once the tools are available for anyone, they can test the security properties of our systems and establish their trust in our products, and they don't have to take our word for it. They can take our tools, run their tests, build on our tests, build on our tools, make modifications, and establish the level of trust that they need in our products. I think that benefits everyone, and it's good for Intel.
So, Tamas, do you have any upcoming conferences or any conferences you're looking forward to, or have you recently presented at?
Yeah, so I recently presented at OffensiveCon in Berlin. That was really awesome. It was the first conference in a couple of years that I was able to attend, so it was great to go out and meet people in person. Other than that, I'm eyeing the Europe Linux Security Conference, but I haven't decided whether I will submit a talk yet. Those conferences are usually pretty fun. Linux Security Conference and Linux Plumbers Conference are great to attend. You get a really wide audience, not just from the security crowd. So I like to attend those. And ISECCon, that's always something that I keep an eye on. So I'm hoping to present something there this year.
Awesome. Well, we want to thank you so much for coming and sharing a little bit about all your
Thank
good
you.
work.
Thank you
This
for
is really
inviting
nice
me.
to hear.
I'm a fan of the show, so it's happy to be part of it.
Fan of the show. We love it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Bye. But that was amazing stuff. Tom and the rest of the team are doing some fantastic work in the community.
That's for sure, man. And that brings us to the end of this episode. For all the episodes of Chips and Salsa, you can look at the link below. And thank you so very much, Tamas, for coming and talking to us today. And we look forward to seeing everybody next time.
Thank you.